So as a business owner in the trades, think construction, manufacturing, distribution, we're constantly navigating decisions we make to achieve our goals. A lot of them founded in risk management and otherwise, but one of those things when we talk about goals is like, what's the future look like for me as an owner? And oftentimes that gets to exit planning, perpetuation planning, like transitioning the business. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. Let's build off that. All right, welcome back to Builders, Makers, Doers, everybody. We've got a fun episode today because we're going to talk about us a little bit.
Yeah, that's
and some of the
fun.
experiences we've had.
I like talking about us.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I got the Husker red on. You know, we talked about the Huskers in the last episode.
Yeah.
We're not sure when these air where we'll be, but we're drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. You drinking the Kool-Aid?
Yeah, you know, I'm feeling all right about it.
I don't know. I think you're guzzling it down a little bit.
I jinxed this last time maybe, so we'll see. We'll know when this one airs.
That's right.
Did I not?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, but what we thought would be kind of fun with this episode is one of the biggest conversations that any business owner needs to have is, what does the future of the company look like? What does the future for me look like? You know, we talk about your business, your purpose, your future. And how are you going to take your business and either perpetuate that down to the next generation, sell the business, monetize it moving forward? What does that look like, and what are your goals around how you're going to go through that with your business? And so we're going to kind of talk about the general idea around perpetuation planning and what business owners should think about, and then we'll use kind of the story that we've gone through here at Ellerbrock-Norris to perpetuate our company and what our goals are for the future, and how we structured that and some of the conversations that we had internally around that. And so the first thing, let's talk about the concept in general, and why this is so important for business owners. So I want hit on first off how a lot of business owners have most of their wealth is tied up in their business, and what that can kind of cause from a not only financial but future perspective for them.
Yeah. So I mean, to your point, statistically, roughly 80% of a business owner's wealth is oftentimes tied up in the business. So getting this right is a big deal.
Yeah, it's massive
for them to achieve, their personal financial goals. But I think to highlight this, there's a lot of studies out there, but this is such a topic right now in time because of the baby boomer generation, right? I mean, you talk about builders, you talk about makers, you talk about doers. That was that generation, right? And so there's a lot of studies out there that put this at a $10 trillion or more economic impact if not done right. And what I mean is not doing the exit of our business right. And why that is because these baby boomers that have built these incredible businesses, all of you have built amazing businesses. And now we're getting to the point where we're at that time in our lives where transitioning away from the business is important. And many have thought through this, many have not. And so when you research it and you look at some of these studies, it's the many have not piece that becomes a problem, because there's tax consequences that are significant. There's impact in our communities if we can't figure out how to perpetuate internally, and we ultimately end up closing our doors or sell third party, and our people no longer work for a locally owned company. We're not necessarily investing the same way in the local economy and market. All of these things go into massive impact. And so one of the things we always talk about at Ellerbrock-Norris, when we talk about the Protect Your Purpose brand tagline, is let's figure this purpose out. As a business owner, what is that? If that
What's
purpose is
to
if it's to transition in family or internally or to sell third party, let's get it right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you all grind away so hard all day, every day in our businesses with some ultimate goal or outcome in mind. And for us to be able to understand that's the purpose, and then be able to go and build plans and strategies to help you achieve that goal, that's really powerful. And it's on your minds. We know it because we have these conversations on a regular basis. And again, right now in time with the baby boomer generation, we got to figure out how we figure it out.
Yeah, well, 100%. I think a lot of times, though, this conversation gets pushed off. Well, I'm young. I'm not looking to go anywhere. I don't need to think about that for a while. And that is the absolute right time to be thinking about it. And to your point, I'm glad you went down that, because the best thing you can do is identify the outcome you want to achieve. So identify what's important, your purpose. If we can do that, we have a guiding star. We have something that we're shooting for. And the reason why I think that there's that massive risk that you were talking about with the baby boomer generation is a lot of businesses didn't plan for that eventual future. And they're waiting until, okay, now I'm ready to retire in a couple years, but they don't have now enough time to perpetuate the business internally. They don't have enough time to fund that for the people buying it internally. They're gonna go look to sell, but now it's more of a fire sale because they really haven't been preparing the business for sale. So they're gonna get less money because of that. And so it becomes really, really, really important that you're starting those discussions early and often. And it doesn't have to be that you're gonna design some fancy strategy, but the earlier you can say, okay, here's what knowing what I know today, here's what I would like to do. Things can change, things can happen, but we wanna be able to say, all right, if you want to, perpetuate that business down to your kids or something like that, that's gonna be a strategy we need to start 10 to 15 years before you think you're ready to retire. Because if you do that, you're gonna be able to maximize the value you can get out and the value that they're buying it for. Because there's strategies you can use both ways to make sure that works well. But I often think that people in the business, again, we're working in the business, not necessarily on the business. And when we're young and not thinking about retirement, it is easy to push that conversation out.
100%. More specifically, when you're in the trades, you're out doing things. You're doing cool stuff every day.
You're building stuff.
You're building cool things, making cool things. It's hard to want to think about, this conversation. But to your point, our team would tell you, and we do a lot of this work. We're in the middle of so many different scenarios. 5-10-year runways at a minimum are ideal. And not only is it to perfect the financial and mechanics of it, but also, think about, we've got to get people prepared to perpetuate this business forward.
That's
right.
And who's the next leaders?
Who are the next leaders? How do we coach them up? Are they ready? Do they want to? You can't. Those are tough things to spring on somebody, a year or two before you're like, I'm riding off into the sunset, And so, and again, the other piece too that we see all the time, is when you start these conversations. Let's use a family business as an example. I'll say father-son. The father, the dad, he's got one idea in mind. The son may have a very different idea. And if we're not spending the time to bring those ideas together to build a plan, and all of a sudden, boom, here we are at the end, and dad's idea is this, son's is that, it's not likely to work real well. Or if it does, it's coming with major sacrifice.
Totally. Well, we've had this happen actually. I was thinking about one of our clients, as you were mentioning that it's a business owner and son-in-law, and we're having a discussion around the future of the business, and the business owner is saying perpetuation planning isn't a concern for him at all, and the son-in-law is his highest concern. And the business owner's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you've told me that I might get this business, but I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know if I can afford it. I have no idea. And the business owner's just like, I plan for you to own the business.
His exact response was, this doesn't bother me because I've got it all figured out. Son-in-law's going, be great if I knew that. So, but those, that is a prime example of just, fortunately, we were able to start that conversation and get them thinking about it, but they're out doing things.
Exactly.
They're out building a business and they're not talking about that. And nobody's fault. Father-in-law is like, no, I got this all mapped out. I think he understands that. Well, he didn't.
Exactly.
Anyway, but those examples are everywhere. But a really cool thing, what you alluded to at the beginning that we're going to talk about is, us and how we've done, our planning in this department. But what's really cool, and I say this all the time, we have such a unique lens that we get to look through, which is not only do we sit in the advisory role where we're navigating these kind of situations and topics and all this stuff that you hear us talk about over time, not only are we doing that as the advisor, but in many, many, many cases, we're doing it as a peer.
Us internally,
are we doing things like our audience? Not necessarily, but I say all the time, you peel back the roof of any business. And like the core things we navigate through on a regular basis, the risk management decisions we make are very similar.
Yeah.
It's around people. It's around the future of the company. It's around, maintaining profitability to reinvest in the company. It's around de-risking the business. Obviously, less for us, more for the audience. It's around keeping people safe. See, all these things that's the interesting lens with us as a peer. So again, we'll talk about how we've done things, and you all can connect pieces to maybe how that might work or fit for you, but it works for us, and it's working for us. And we share those thoughts and ideas with our clients, and again, they take parts and they put their own spin on it, and we've seen a lot of pretty cool, successful stories through that process.
Yeah, well, and I think my dad has always said, the painter's house needs paint, right?
Yeah.
And so that's some of the lens in which we had looked at where we were going as a company. We're having these discussions with business owners, and then we turn the lens on us and say, all right, well, what are we doing? Where are we going? How are we going to perpetuate this business? And I want you to talk through how we looked at our purpose, kind of at that time in particular, but the future of the company, not necessarily what we're trying to go do for clients, but when we looked out, 50, 75, 100 years, we still wanted to be around as Ellerbrock-Norris. And so I want you to talk through that, because that's really what started us down this path. And as you're talking about that, I want everybody thinking about the difference in strategy that can be used depending on this lens. Meaning, if your decisions today, as it relates to how you want to perpetuate the company, and even your day-to-day decisions, could be impacted by whether or not you want to sell the business, you want to perpetuate it internally, et cetera, family business, all the things. The strategies you'd implement could change based on that and the timing of it. And so that's kind of the exercise we had gone down first, was who and what do we want to look like long term, beyond us? When we're 6 feet underground, what do we want Ellerbrock-Norris to be? So talk through just our conversations there, your thought process behind it, some of the conversations we were having, and how that got us to kind of leading down that 100%.
Path. So at the end of the day, you had to start with what our purpose was, right? And we made a very distinct decision to kind of buck the trend in our industry, right? Which is commonplace in a lot of industry right now. There's a lot of consolidation. A lot of firms like Ellerbrock-Norris are selling and to other bigger firms and doing that and all those things. And we just felt, to serve our clients at the highest level, to give back to the communities, to bring our team, give our team the opportunities we wanted to give them, our partners and everybody, that we felt doing it as Ellerbrock-Norris, remaining privately held and independent, was our purpose.
Yep.
And you may have figured out, this is episode number 2, we share the same last name. We're cousins. He mentioned his...
Not brothers, though.
Not brothers, correct, cousins. He mentioned his dad, Brian, and that was Brian's, and my uncle, that was his vision as well, which is really, that's a big piece of it, because as we entered this journey, Brian was the primary, nearly sole owner of the company, and so, we had to start with alignment of purpose there, right? And so Brian's vision it's huge. It's huge. So going back to the example we said earlier about, the son-in-law, father-in-law not having these conversations, we needed to have these conversations collectively around, is this the path that everybody gets in alignment with? And ultimately, that's where it began.
Gets excited about.
Gets really excited about. And so that was the purpose piece. And so, once you figure out that, then it's like, all right, how do we start to back into the mechanics, the finances, and things of the plan? And how does it look going forward? From a vision standpoint, we're depending on when you watch this, but in next year, 2026, 120-year anniversary.
I hope they're watching it before 2026.
Yeah, right. I know. Maybe they're watching it for the third time because it was so
there you
good
go, yeah.
that it's sometime in 2026. But we've got a lot of history. So again, going back to the purpose, it's like we've served these communities, these businesses just like yours for so long, and we've got this incredible vision and purpose that we've developed, that we felt the best way to go help our clients, help businesses like yours achieve that, is to come along that journey, remain privately held, independently owned, just like many of our clients are looking to do. So that was the beginning. And that, to answer the original question, and which is what we would tell everybody is let's help identify that first, and get everybody in alignment there.
Yep, and that's the first step, 100%. If you don't have that alignment, your strategy changes, obviously. And so let's talk through how long ago, first of all, did we start that? I mean, it was, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, at least. I would say really, truly, the conversations probably go back almost as far as 10 years as you and I got into leadership roles and we started to have these conversations with your dad and other partners in the company, and we just started to cast that vision out. It goes back a while. So yeah, going back to the 5 or 10 year runway, and then of course the actual plan itself, that's a 5-year true, plan when we talk about the transition itself and all that. So I mean, when it's all said and done, I think kind of start to finish, it'll be at least 10 years worth of kind of navigating through it.
Well, I think that's important because as we talked earlier, you want to start these conversations well in advance of when you actually have to begin implementing the plan or whatever strategy you decide to use, because I bet if we were to have my dad sitting here, he'd tell you, when we start having these discussions, he's like, that's so far off. Like, I'm never going to retire. Why is that a big deal, guys? But now I think we're a couple years out from having the financial side of his perpetuation plan being complete and being in a comfortable spot from knowing that we did and we can perpetuate the company financially, which is a very difficult piece of that. I think he'd tell you, I can't even believe it's here. He'd have been sitting there and saying like, now I'm ready.
Yep.
And the problem with that is that's where I think personally that a lot of these businesses end up having to sell to private equity, to everything you mentioned earlier about our industry, to an outside party, to a bigger national firm, because they don't see another way out. And if they were to, okay, now I want to retire in 2 years, I can't get the amount of money for the business that I need by perpetuating it internally, because you just can't afford it.
100%.
The people buying it can't afford it. You don't have enough time to let the strategies that allow for that purchase to really work.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece to talk about is internal, family or not, while both strategies, whether it's an external sale or an internal transition, both are challenging. But internal, it's definitely got an added set of challenges. And again, the financial piece is a big one that I think people have to understand. Our team will oftentimes refer to it as like the wealth gap for that exiting owner. But what I mean is, you mentioned there is so much, and it's all over in our industry, it's all over in the trades, there is so much private equity, there's so much of this consolidation, there's big dollars out there coming into these, to try to acquire and grab up these successful companies. And the reality of it is for these oftentimes baby boomers, as I said earlier, these exiting owners, the dollars that actually are going to likely come into their pocket on a third-party sale versus an internal, there can be a significant gap. Very specifically, if we don't have a runway to solve for that.
Yeah.
If we're talking about trying to put something together in a year or two, there is no question, almost 100% of the time, what that exiting owner is going to get purely from a financial perspective on a third-party sale versus internal. It's going to be a massive difference, because the reality is, in order to do things internally, it gets really challenging. We're talking about, and you'll understand this if you've thought through this, we're talking about the people that work within the business that are looking to purchase the company from the exiting owner. And unless we're independently wealthy otherwise, the business that we're navigating through every day is how those dollars are coming into us. And you think about how dollars come in and how they're taxed at the corporate level. Then we get taxed when, on our own personal income taxes and all the things. And so that dollar gets eroded along the way. And we as the purchaser are asked to take that same dollar and use it to purchase the shares of the company. Oh, and by the way, when we do that without good strategy, there's capital gains tax that comes to the exiting owner. And so you can see really quick that dollar comes in, and by the time it gets back to facilitate all that we just talked about, it's a fraction of itself at that point. So the strategies get massive from a financial piece. And then I also want to touch on emotion.
Oh yeah.
Like we talked about bringing people along in this journey to be prepared to be owners. Well, the other thing is like there's a lot of emotion. And probably more so.
That's probably the more important piece.
I think so too. And probably more so in the trades than any business, because again, you've built cool things.
Yeah.
Like you were the one pounding,
stuff,
and welding and doing all the stuff that made the things happen. And to think about that going away, that's like your identity, right?
Yeah,
so again, that's where the purpose piece has to come in, is how do we connect it? Like there is a purpose beyond it. But like the emotions, and we can attest that it doesn't go without, slamming some hands on the table and not agreeing on something, but then hugging and having a whiskey later. The things happen, but I think being able to ride that emotional roller coaster over a period of time and be able to get the exiting person or people in a comfortable place emotionally, like it takes time.
Yeah.
And with a good vision and a good plan and being able to connect the dots, you can get there. But like I will promise you, for those listening, the financial piece is going to be a challenge, but if you don't plan for it, unless you're one of the rare few, the emotional side, it's going to take a toll. And nobody, specifically in family, like we all know, you don't want that. So anyway.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the financial piece can be figured out, especially if you have the right amount of time. Those strategies can work, but that's more objective, and the emotional side can take just as much time and energy, and sometimes more. And you might have to have some of these discussions and then let it sit for a while and let everybody think about it for a month or two and then come back to the room. And those things just need to take time, but you need to be having those discussions, because that's equally as important. I'm glad you brought that up. But so again, let's stick on how we were viewing as the folks going through it. 'Cause a lot of times we talk as the advisor versus as the business owner. And so, we weren't perpetuating from one business owner to one business owner, which is also inherent challenges. But I think one of the biggest things we had to go through was that alignment of like next leadership, next ownership group. How do we want to view that? How do we want that to work? Because different people are going to be buying different shares at different times. That all has to be planned out. And so I think that's a big part of the conversation, because not only do you have to have people that can have the wherewithal to do the job, to lead the company, but they also then have to be good stewards of the ownership and the shares of the company, because that's a completely different mindset, or can be. 100%. One, you're working day to day in the business, and the other, you have to be thinking about all the people in the business. You got to be thinking about where are we going as a company and how do we get there. And so I love your thoughts on just that piece of it, and how important that side of it is too. You've hit on it a little bit, but like that next leadership, how do you think about the people involved? How did we go through that, I guess I should say, and walk through that, I guess?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's figuring out what you said, like who is going to, now in our family business, and you and I mentioned as we started this, when we kind of got into these conversations, we had taken on a leadership role, but we spent a lot of time, we even had external leadership coaching and some things to help bring us along to understand, how do we cast the vision going forward of the company? Because that probably under a lot of transitions shifts a little bit. And so we did a lot of things. We talked a lot about the vivid vision and casting things forward. And so we started to work on that. And then of course we spent a lot of time with other key stakeholders in the company, walking through what this looks like as we start to transition. Obviously getting your dad's or the exiting partner's belief in the vision, belief in our ability to cast it forward and carry it forward. But we did a lot of that internally, but we used external resources to help, bring us along. And so I think that was a piece of it, was just getting the organization as a whole in alignment with, the transition from one generation to the next. And I feel like we did that, pretty good.
I want to jump in on that for a second, because a lot of times you have people that have an allegiance to exiting owner, maybe don't have the same relationship or allegiance to the next generation, which you have to build over time, and you have to be able to have a strategy around that too.
Yeah, and I think for us it was, trying to be as transparent as we could with things that were happening. Again, painting and creating the vision of what this means going forward, connecting the why, connecting the purpose. I think it was a big part for us because it was internal to express to people that like this is a growth company, this is a legacy company, this creates opportunity for everybody on our team, all of our partners, our clients, our communities to come along that journey with us. And so I think that was a big part of how we were able to kind of overcome, the other challenges that exist with the transition from, one generation to the next. So that was a big part. And then of course, getting into the financial piece and building that plan. And there's a lot of different strategies that can go into it, but, it's understanding, and this is a huge piece of it. It's understanding the personal goals of the exiting owner financially. Because at the end of the day, you've got to understand that. Because that 100%. Can be a hurdle when the emotions kick in. That's going to be the default is like, wait a minute, like, am I going to be able to do the things I want? And so our team spends a lot of time identifying that first and figuring out what's it going to take to achieve success there.
Because, sorry, before you keep going, that's so important because a lot of times we just think that the exiting business owner wants the most money they can get.
Right.
This is, I would say 95% of the time, not accurate.
Right.
They have other motivations that they would rather see versus top dollar. If they wanted top dollar, they'd go just sell it externally. That's always how you're going to get the most money. But a lot of times they want legacy. They want to see the people that they've worked with for the last 10, 15, 20 years to take the next step with the company. They want to see it do big things and build the next thing and all of that into the future. More than they want an extra 10% on their sales. So I think that's totally super important, is getting that piece of it dialed in so that everybody's in alignment that, hey, if we can create that outcome or better, we are all happy.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And so, again, but like getting back to, I guess, the mechanics of it and such, like the runway is so important because once you start to understand this and we can figure out how we achieve all the things you just said and connect the financial goals to it. Now you can start back into what are all the tools we can use, right? In our case, we're using a lot of different tools. We've got non-qualified deferred comp strategies that help do it. We've got, the way that the purchasing of shares and the loan structures and terms, like all of these things go into helping build that financial path for the exiting owner. And then, by the way, the timing of stuff. Like there are massive levers that can be pulled from a tax strategy perspective that you lose if you don't have the runway and all of a sudden you're doing this at the last second and it's like, well, oh my goodness, I've got capital gains, I've got this, and like the dollars get eroded. So again, being very strategic on that, we can start to really close the gap again, like I said before, because while it's not the main focus, it is a big piece of it. While we can close the gap from the external versus the internal, that's why being able to build and have that runway is so important. And so we were very diligent and really good at being able to do that. And of course, again, our team has that unique lens of having these conversations with a lot of our clients and being able to utilize those strategies for ourselves. But everybody's situation is going to be unique. Everybody's situation is going to call for different mechanics and strategic design, but like at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're connecting that purpose of the company, the purpose of the exiting owner, and we're working our way back into how do we achieve success along the way. And we did that well at Ellerbrock-Norris, and we're a year and a half roughly away from like the actual mechanics of it kind of finishing, and so we've seen it play out very successfully, but it still doesn't go without having to revisit it, emotion kicking in and all the things.
Yeah, and I think, then to outline the outcome, per se, is, I think by going through this process, and obviously we could ask our team, but we've created a much more stable conversation, much more stable feeling with our team who, they're going to start to naturally ask questions. What happens when Brian's gone? He's been the leader, he's been the business owner for the last 35 years, and what happens? And that creates some natural uncertainty. And so we've been pretty vocal about what we're trying to do and how we're doing it internally, and ideally that creates stability. And so it feels like we've made that transition pretty well. Now I think everybody understands that, the company is going to continue on and be who we are long term because we've put the work into getting there, and they don't have to worry about going to work for some other company that they don't know about because we had to sell the company.
Exactly.
So I think that's what it provides when you do that right.
100%. Before we wrap, I want to hit on one more thing too, that because this is huge in the trades side, with the time to do and plan, relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships are such a big piece. That can be internally, like you said, but for us, Brian built a business with a lot of client relationships, a lot of strategic partner relationships.
That's a great point.
If we're building, making, doing, we've got these owners, these founders have so many of the relationships. It allows you to be able to understand the risk that's there.
Yep.
And be able to transition those relationships over a period of time so that when the exit ultimately does happen, hopefully as planned, that risk is mitigated or completely eliminated.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for us because there were a lot of relationships that have been built over a long time that if we just,
see you later.
happened, those are massively at risk.
Yeah,
and
totally.
so I that's the piece that we didn't really touch on, but think through that because that's another massive reason why you talk about devaluing a company in a hurry.
Yeah.
The founder exits and all the relationships exit with him or her. That's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. I hope, again, that provides some context, when we start talking about exit planning, perpetuation planning, and why that's so important. Hopefully it provides some kind of context around that and the things we've gone through and the conversations we've had and how you might want to do that in your business. And so we're going to continue having these types of conversations. We're going to bring on guests, as we've mentioned, to talk through their company, decisions they've made, strategies they've used around a variety of different topics. So stay tuned for future episodes, and we look forward to the next show.
Yeah, that was fun.
See you.